Chevrolet presents San Diego and the Ramona Country. Romantic? Yes, indeed. Especially to this honeymoon couple. We enter the city along a smooth, wide stretch of engineering genius known as the Rio Freeway.
They're called the Penetrators, 5 young men who wanted to get together to form their own new wave rock and roll group. Of course, most of them got their start in rock music with other groups. For example, lead singer Gary Heffron once sang for a group called Monotone and the Nucleoids. But now they're churning out their own hits, some of which can be heard on FM radio. They write their own lyrics and feel their songs really have something to say.
She writes about performers and fellas that she knows, where they've gone and when. She's got her thumbs in her Levi's.
I will put myself on the record about the Ramones. They're the dumbest band I've ever met in my life. And I know that Joey Ramone was very smart. And I love the band, don't get me wrong, but they were just not the smartest guys on the block. And I remember being petrified opening for them.
Doug Diaz referenced William Burroughs' story, The Exterminator, and thought that that would be an appropriate name, and I thought that was a good name too, because it would talk about exterminating old ideas, in particular dealing with music. We try to tell those people, you know, this is punk rock. You can't have a stage like 2 feet high with no security around it. It's just not going to work. Potential was always there for violence. There was a lot of craziness. Yeah, it was a blast.
Rock, San Diego in 1979. It found a home at the Skeleton Club near the Gaslamp Quarter. It appeared unexpectedly under the shadow of night, an underground music scene, menacing, loud. It was too much for America's finest city. The Skeleton Club didn't last long. It was closed down for loudness and disorderly behavior.
Here's our special guest on Sunup, the Zeros.
music was an escape, you know, from my surroundings and my family situation at the time, because my dad was never really around, and my mom was always struggling with the kids, and music was a nice escape, you know, within. It's not like you ran away from anything, you were just focusing your mind on something else. When I met Baba, and he mentioned to me, hey, you know, there's this band with my cousin and my friend Javier, and we need a bass player. You should play with us, etc., etc. And then he started turning me on to really great music, like the Velvet Underground and the Modern Lovers' first album, the New York Dolls. Suddenly it's a whole new world. Everything you knew before that just didn't matter anymore, you know? You just went on to the next phase.
And we were really young. We were 16 and 17,
Yeah.
and the other people were 25, like that. So we were going home to school the next day after playing a gig at the Whiskey and driving all the way back. And I think we really felt we were part of a movement. And if you're 16, to be part of a scene, as in high school we were alienated, we were the freaks, this was a gathering of the oddballs and the freaks, and we felt part of something.
You are all from the San Diego area, right?
Right.
And you are Javier?
Javier, yes.
And introduce the rest of your group, could you?
This is Robert Allen Lopez.
And he has a connection to someone here at KFMB, right?
Right.
Your dad works, the floor director works here on Sunup and does, in fact, he designed this beautiful set, I think, in the background, too, which is really super for the Zeros. And on drums?
Baba Chanel.
Baba, and you are?
Hector.
You guys got a new record out, don't you?
Yeah.
And that was the first song we heard was the one that you're really pushing, and then we heard the other side of it as well, right?
Right.
Is it doing pretty well for you?
Yeah, it's sold really well. In the first couple of days, they sold out of 2,000 pressings that they did initially, and they'll be pressing more.
That's fantastic. Good luck with your record and with your concert, and thank you for being our guests on Sunup. And we'll be back with news from Shirley Klum, so stay with us.
When I came into it, I was like, ooh, you know, I had a guitar and I had an amp and I was looking for a band to play. I had been, you know, just playing guitar at home to records, and I had been reading about all the punk rock stuff, and I read about the Sex Pistols in England, and I thought, oh, this is cool. I could actually be in a band. It doesn't have to be like, you know, Boston or whatever the bands were at the time.
Those were the days of payola, and we didn't have a chance. We weren't being taken seriously, and I think that really affected what happened to us next.
When I was growing up in Barstow, I bought 45s every week. I'd go to the record store and buy whatever was out on the top 40. I'd go buy the 45s, and I had a little Singer portable record player, you know, battery powered, so you could play records outside. And I would buy, you know, a lot of it was great stuff, a lot of it was schlock, but I'd just buy records, you know. And I remember we'd go to the JCPenney's and we'd steal records. We'd steal albums. I don't know how we got them out the store, but we'd steal them. We stole record albums, socks, and T-shirts. I moved to San Diego to go to college, and I lived in the dorm, the private dorm. For some reason, I decided to live in the private dorm. I couldn't afford it. I used my whole student loan to live in there, and I was living with all these kids from Malibu and Beverly Hills and Pacific Palisades, and they were all into David Bowie at the time. So my roommates, they'd gone to see David Bowie the first time he came to LA, and they played him all the time. So I started getting into David Bowie. And I'd go back to visit my friends in Barstow, you know, once a month or so on the weekends. I remember bringing a David Bowie tape up and playing it for them. They're like, what is this? This is really gay, you know? And I'm like, no, this is really, really cool, you know? And we listened, a couple of my friends got into it, and then, so I started listening to David Bowie and Mott the Hoople and T-Rex and all that kind of stuff, you know, Slade, Sweet, Queen, and kept going to see shows all the time. I was going to San Diego State, and we'd go see shows, you know, whatever came to town. And then I started getting into, I was in the film department at San Diego State, and there was people in the film department who were listening to punk rock stuff. So I started kind of like listening to some of that stuff, and I was living in Mission Beach at the time, and I remember I bought the first Devo record, and I lived above some surfer dudes, and I remember they saw me or heard me playing it, and they started making fun of me, like, and to the point where I just like, oh, I took the record back, and you know, Licorice Pizza and PB, right, and took the record back, and about a week later I started thinking, well, like, I like that record. I went and got it again.
Played it at outdoor shows. We played it at, the very first gig was at a barn in Escondido, and it was like cows and the whole bit, but it was just a bunch of you know, people hanging around having beers, and we played in the barn. But that was fun. That was one of the fun shows. You know? I remember Johnny Vomit coming up to me one time and spitting on me just as I first came out. Before I even opened my mouth, the band just started and he spit on me, and it like ruined my shirt. I don't know if it had like some kind of acid chemical in it or whatever, but it wouldn't wash off. It like burned a hole right through. It was terrible.
The unknowns. Shadow Dog tonight. One more day. One more day. Total substitutions.
In the spirit of all this, we said, this guy has to be in the band. This guy's got to be in the band. I said, can you play bass? He goes, no. I said, do you want to learn? He goes, well, it all depends. What kind of material are we talking about? So I gave him the how to learn how to play bass with the Ventures.
One more day. Just something in the chips. Out of the past. Hungry and lean.
He could die any time. I mean, he could sit down in a chair and get a blood clot and die. That fast. And he knew it. Doctors even told him that.
Shadows stalk the night.
The unknown. Repeat your last word.
Shadows stalk the night.
Johnny's rude and selfish. He doesn't think of others. He won't take turns. And he always seems to be mad at somebody, always shouting or bossing us around.
I think the reason I started doing music is because there was nothing for me to listen to. And I wanted, because I was doing this stuff that was abstract and experimental, you know, and I'd done this in photography, I'd done it in painting, and I thought, what if I take these same principles and apply them to sound? Because I've been disappointed so much during the 70s. Everybody would say, oh, this is this unbelievable thing, it's changing everything, this is like the next big thing. And I go and I get like a record by Patti Smith and I put it on and it's like, huh? What the fuck are they talking about? It's like I wanted something that was completely different. And because I initially started doing music with Steve Hitchcock, and we wanted to do something that, you know, I wanted to do something that didn't sound like anything else I'd ever heard before. But unfortunately, Steve's instrument was a saxophone. So you could do the most abstract thing on earth and you put a saxophone in it and it sounds like the saxophone is dictating the content of everything else that's happening. So eventually, you know, it's like Robert joined us, and I wanted to do something that was just totally abstract and minimalist, but everybody else found it grating and annoying. I didn't. I found it emotive. I found it evocative. And I know a lot of people have come up to me over the years and said, oh yeah, we used to have this noise band and we start doing stuff and in 5 minutes, everybody would leave the room. And it's like, well, okay, if that's your goal is to like drive everybody out of the room, then you're very successful. My goal was to do something that was like totally abstract, but that it had the same immediacy as like, you know, to me, like the best rock and roll is just like something that's so immediate. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to understand it. You just, it hits you in the gut. And that's what always appealed to me. And I always thought there was a way you could do noise music or do something totally experimental and have it have that same sense of immediacy without watering it down or without, you know, selling out or whatever.
Smut peddlers do not have the right to contaminate our society. They lack the moral standards and values of our Judeo-Christian heritage. They not only oppose the principles of that heritage, which has given us our rich institutions and laws, but they advocate their overthrow.
One time I was channel surfing and there was the thing on with, I think it was Billy Graham, and he was doing, that was back when he was on the crusade that, and Reagan was president, that the American youth's been corrupted and, you know, they're being bombarded with this music that's coming out, started in England, and how the whole American youth's just like going downhill, and they were doing cuts of, you know, punk rock album covers, and anyways, and he starts crying, and they cut in this, I think it was an ad, Battalion Saints ad I did, for the Second Coming, and it has, you know, these hands ripped, you know, coming out of the grave, you know, and they used that, and I thought that was pretty funny. Made Billy Graham cry.
Remember, children can be contaminated by magazines brought into the home by adults.
I did actually get hate email from parents from across the country saying that they found this fanzine in their kid's room, and it was Testicle Head, and how dare I, you know, put out this kind of trash, and I should be ashamed of myself, and I'm going to hell. But you know what? I think, like, for me, the main thing, I don't know, back then it's not that I wanted to piss people off, I just wanted them to like rattle their cages and get them to think, you know how stupid violence really is, you know. So that was my intention, and it just took wrong.
Write letters of commendation to police, prosecutors, other public officials, and to the newspapers whenever they take action against obscenity.
The Tesla stories always start out the same way, where John wakes up from a drunken stupor, and he's usually in the wrong place, you know. He doesn't know where he's at, and he's like in a cowboy bar in Norco, right? And the people are always the one. The people and the characters in the comics are always the one that are, you know, instigating the trouble that follows when Teskelhead releases his great furious anger upon them.
What these publications promote as fun has helped to increase the spread of venereal disease in this country.
It's Saturday night at Fairmount Hall in North Park, a punk rock concert featuring Black Flag. The music is frenzied up to 300 beats per minute. On the dance floor, teenage open warfare, body contact dancing, solo, slamming. This is no junior prom. Enter the pit at your own risk. What is this thing called punk? Why is it happening? The Battalion of Saints, whom we found recording at Hit Single Sound Studios in Lemon Grove, represents scores of fledgling punk bands that are being conceived in neighborhood garages across America, anxious for at least 2 minutes of fame. Because in the punk scene, that's how long the inspiration is supposed to last. Punk does not follow the rules.
People are angry, people are upset at what's happened, especially the music scene. The music scene is going downhill. It's gone downhill. Styx, Van Halen, all that garbage that's on the radio, it's just what it is, it's garbage. I mean, the kids are just like eating it up, and it's just deteriorating their brains. It's turning them into styrofoam inside the head instead of actual brain. They're not thinking. They're not doing any thinking at all. You know, and we're trying to get them to think a little bit.
So don't let anyone tell you that punk rock is dead in San Diego.
But take away punk rock's rhetoric about nothingness, a plastic society, boredom. What remains is a raw, aggressive rock and roll that rages and excites and asks the question that teenagers have been asking for decades. Why doesn't anyone understand me? On special assignment, Greg Dumas, 10 News.
Remember now, don't be too noisy or rough. And don't break things.
Gee, thanks.
And thus the grotesque costuming and the significance of the extreme spiked heel and the tight boot, the riding crop, the burning cigarette, rubber and leather garments, and all the rest.
Body slicks, remember my
punk rock came around and it made me think different ways. It made me, you know, not want to look like everybody else, even though I did. Hardcore Picnic, 1985, Mariners Point. The front played, but it was like the Insolence and Conservative Itch, but there was a couple hundred people, and that to us was like, wow, there's that many punks in San Diego? I didn't know that. That was kind of the end of punk rock in that form. You know, it kind of died then, and we kind of died with it. We were already moving on to other stuff. I think shortly thereafter, the front became a two-person band. It became me on a noisy guitar a la Jesus and Mary Chain, and Mark Baez singing and playing my 12-string acoustic. And we had a Dr. Rhythm. And so it was like fulfilling my big-ass fantasy of being Suicide and him being a singer-songwriter.